Did you know there is a moment in the day when reality is most vulnerable to your influence? A moment when words lose their strength, but what you feel becomes universal law. This window opens every night, just minutes before you fall asleep, and what you place in that space determines what you will experience upon waking. Today, you are going to discover a simple practice based on the teachings of Neville Goddard that defies logic and awakens the spirit. It's not just about imagining something good. It's about feeling it as absolute truth, as if it were already happening now. If you apply this technique tonight, your subconscious mind will have no choice but to obey, and reality will follow. Before we continue, write this in the comments below. I feel as if it's already real. Write this phrase to anchor your new vibration and open the doors of your new world. If there was someone who uncovered the invisible backstage of reality, that person was Jacobo Grinberg. A neurophysiologist, psychologist, and mystic, Grinberg dedicated his life to studying consciousness and how the mind shapes the world around us. His most well-known theory, the neuronal field, proposes that what we call reality is in fact a projection of our mental structure. But Grinberg was not alone in this pursuit. Decades earlier, another thinker had reached the same truth by a spiritual path, Neville Goddard. In his 1950s lectures, Neville said that imagination is not fantasy, but a creative tool, capable of shaping everything we live. And the most powerful moment to use it is right before sleep. The connection between these two masters is clear. Both understood that the external world responds to the internal vibration, and that the state you carry as you fall asleep acts like a direct command to reality. Today, we unite science and spirituality to reveal how a simple exercise, performed at this exact moment of the day, can activate your true power to create. The question is, are you willing to take control of your own reality from today onward? Every night, without realizing it, you cross the most powerful portal for shaping your reality, the final minutes before falling asleep. This isn't just a moment of rest. It is the point at which the conscious mind begins to turn off, and the subconscious, the true architect of your life, takes command. It is in this silent interval that you plant the seeds of what will bloom in your experience the next day. Jacobo Grinberg called this access to the neuronal field, an invisible matrix of information where everything you perceive, feel, and believe is recorded and reflected back as reality. Neville Goddard, with his spiritual approach, identified this moment as sacred. He taught that what you feel with conviction before sleep is absorbed by the subconscious as absolute truth and will inevitably manifest. This is where most people go wrong. Instead of using this moment to plant elevated intentions, they replay worries, scarcity, regrets, and fears. By falling asleep with these emotions, they are literally programming their minds to keep manifesting what they most wish to avoid. Imagine this. Your mind is like fertile soil. During the day, you harvest the fruits of the seeds you planted the night before, and even if you desire good things throughout the day, if at bedtime you are feeding doubt, anxiety, or frustration, those are the seeds that will create tomorrow. The subconscious doesn't respond to what you consciously want. It responds to what you deeply feel, especially in that threshold state between wakefulness and sleep. Science confirms this. Neuroscience studies show that as you fall asleep, the brain begins to emit alpha and theta waves, brain states associated with deep meditation, hypnosis, and information absorption. This is why children, who naturally live in this state during their early years, absorb everything as truth, without filtering, without judging. And this is exactly the same state you access every night, effortlessly, before sleep. The difference is that, unlike children, you have the power to choose what you want to plant. What Neville Goddard proposed was a silent revolution. Instead of falling asleep in chaos, fall asleep in the peace of what you wish to live. Don't just wish for it. Feel as if it's already real. Imagine not as someone who is waiting, but as someone who is grateful for something already received. Because when you enter sleep immersed in that vibration, the external world has no choice. It must obey. Right now, before you, there is a door. Every night you cross that door. The difference now is that you know. And what you decide to feel as you cross it is what the universe will build for you. Neville Goddard called this special moment SATS, state akin to sleep. For him, this wasn't just a transition between wakefulness and rest. It was a vibrational sanctuary where the conscious mind falls silent and the subconscious becomes completely receptive. And it is precisely there that the greatest creative power a human being can access resides. During the day, your mind is constantly occupied with tasks, stimuli, responsibilities, and concerns. All of this keeps you locked in beta waves, which dominate the logical, rational mind. But as the body relaxes and sleep approaches, those waves slow down. The brain begins to operate in alpha and theta waves, the same brain patterns that dominate a child's mind in the early years of life, exactly when belief systems are being formed. That's why SATS is not just any state. It is the portal between the visible and invisible world, between what you think and what you become. It is the most fertile ground for sowing reality, and you don't need to be an expert in meditation or visualization to access it. You simply need to lie down, relax your body completely, and allow your awareness to float in that threshold between wakefulness and sleep. It is a moment of surrender, not effort. You don't try to create. You allow yourself to feel as if what you desire is already real. Picture this. You are lying down in silence, eyes closed. Your body is completely relaxed. You are not asleep, but you are not fully awake either. It is in this space that your imagination comes alive, not as a distant fantasy, but as an emotionally real experience. In this state, what you feel is accepted without resistance by the subconscious. And what the subconscious accepts, it manifests. Neville said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled." This means not only visualizing what you want, but living the emotion of already having achieved it, as if it were a memory, not a desire. Feel the joy, the gratitude, the security, the relief, the peace. By doing this, you are programming the subconscious with the exact frequency of the reality you want to live. Grinberg, in turn, explained that in this state, the neuronal field aligns with your inner perception. This means that when you stay in SATS, vibrating with peace, fulfillment, and certainty, the field around you reorganizes to reflect exactly that. SATS is more than a technique. It is a sacred ritual of silent transformation. And the best part, you already go through it every night. The difference now is that you can enter this state consciously, with intention and with purpose. Because in this state, you are not just dreaming, you are creating. In the 1950s, Neville Goddard conducted an experiment as simple as it was revolutionary. He called it the ladder test, and its purpose was to prove directly that imagination is the only force capable of shaping reality. Not words, not vague wishes, but the inner feeling lived as truth. He instructed his students as follows. For 3 consecutive nights before sleep, they were to mentally repeat the phrase, "I will not climb a ladder." Repeat it slowly with focus until falling asleep. But at the same time, they were to imagine themselves climbing a ladder with all the sensory details, the touch of their hands, the weight of their body, the effort of their legs, the sound of the steps. Days later, the results were surprising. One by one, the students reported experiences where they ended up climbing ladders, in dreams, in unexpected situations at work, or while passing through places where ladders suddenly appeared. They had lived in reality what they had imagined, even while verbally declaring the opposite. What Neville wanted to demonstrate with this is simple yet powerful. The subconscious does not understand negation. It doesn't hear the logic behind the phrase, I will not. It only absorbs what is felt as real, and in this case what was felt, with detail, emotion and vividness, was the act of climbing a ladder. Result: the subconscious obeyed. This test was a turning point. It proved that the language of the subconscious is not made of words, but of emotions, images, and inner states. You may say, "I don't want to fail." But if inside you are reliving scenes of failure, feeling fear, picturing yourself being rejected or losing, that is what will be recorded. That is what will manifest. This is why so many affirmations fail. People repeat positive phrases, but continue to feel the opposite. They say, "I am prosperous," but vibrate scarcity. They say, "I am confident," but feel insecure. The conscious mind says one thing. The subconscious hears something completely different and responds only to what was truly felt. Jacobo Grinberg also pointed to this phenomenon. In his studies of the neuronal field, he affirmed that perceived reality is not a reflection of the external world, but a projection of the observer's inner configuration. If you imagine clearly, feel intensely, and repeat with conviction, you are shaping the frequency of your mind, and reality aligns to that frequency. The ladder test was never about ladders. It was about proving to yourself that the world around you is a mirror of your felt imagination. When you allow yourself to live inwardly what you desire, with emotion and surrender, the universe cannot deny it. Because, as Neville said, what you accept as truth in your inner world sooner or later becomes your outer reality. The subconscious mind is like the most fertile soil in the universe. Whatever is planted in it, with emotion and repetition, will be cultivated and inevitably manifested in the external world. That is why feeling is the true command of creation, not just logical thought or the words we consciously speak. Neville Goddard taught clearly, "It's not what you say, it's what you feel as true." That statement may seem simple, but it carries a profound principle. You can repeat 1,000 times an affirmation like, "I am rich," but if inside the predominant feeling is scarcity, fear, or doubt, that is what your reality will continue to reflect. The subconscious is literal, but it is not logical. It doesn't understand negation, irony, or hidden intent. It operates by vibration. It responds to what is felt with intensity and frequency, especially when your conscious mind is at rest, like in the SATS state before sleep. That is when the subconscious is most open, most sensitive, and most likely to accept new information as truth. Jacobo Grinberg, with his scientific view of consciousness, described the subconscious as a field of information that shapes perceived reality based on the observer's inner structure. In other words, it is not the world that imposes your experience. It is your inner configuration that projects the reality around you. And this configuration is defined, above all, by the feelings you sustain. Imagine someone who affirms every day, "I am healthy," but that person at bedtime replays scenes of illness, feels fear, anticipates negative diagnoses. What is being communicated to the subconscious is not health, but the expectation of illness. And since the subconscious is faithful to what it feels is real, it reacts to that as a command, and reality corresponds. Now think of the opposite. Someone who, even in the midst of difficulties, chooses to feel gratitude, to visualize healing, and to enter a state of deep trust before sleep. That person is planting different vibrational seeds, and over time, the subconscious, which does not distinguish between the lived and the imagined, begins to align reality with this new pattern. That is why it's not enough to think positively. You must feel positively. Feeling is the code that communicates to the universe what you desire, and the more emotional the inner experience, the stronger its imprint on the subconscious mind. Neville said, "The subconscious does not select, it accepts what you feel and multiplies." And Grinberg would add, What you perceive as truth becomes the form of your reality. Therefore, the most important question you can ask yourself before sleep is not, "What do I want?" but rather, "What am I feeling as real?" Because that is what the subconscious will obey. Knowledge without application is only information. But when a spiritual principle is lived with intention, it becomes a ritual of power. What Neville Goddard and Jacobo Grinberg taught us is not just to be understood intellectually, but embodied in daily life, especially in the nightly routine before sleep. That is the moment when everything can change. If you decide to act, to turn this practice into a real and effective ritual, the first step is to create the right environment. Your subconscious mind responds not only to what you imagine, but to the state you are in while imagining. So before going to bed, turn off electronic devices, dim the lights, and silence the stimuli. This is the signal to your body and mind that you are entering a sacred space. Treat this moment as an inner temple, not just the automatic end of the day. Lie down calmly, take a few deep breaths. Allow your body to relax part by part, as if dissolving into the mattress. The deeper the physical relaxation, the more open the channel with the subconscious becomes. This is the beginning of SATS, the state akin to sleep. Now, choose your key affirmation, a short, powerful sentence that represents exactly what you want to live. But remember, it must be affirmed as if it is already real. For example, "My life flows with purpose and abundance. I am fully loved and valued. I live with health, strength, and vitality." Repeat this phrase mentally, gently, without hurry. But above all, feel what you are saying. Emotion is the fuel. The more you feel the truth behind the words, the deeper the impression on the subconscious will be. You are not asking, you are assuming. Then move into emotional visualization. Picture yourself living the reality you desire. See the details, the faces, the colors, the sounds. But more important than seeing is feeling. Feel yourself in this new life. Live this scene inside you as if it were a memory. Because for the subconscious, felt imagination is reality. Hold this scene and this feeling until you fall asleep. Don't force it. Don't try to control it. Simply remain in this state of silent gratitude, as if you were about to wake up in a new world. Because, in truth, you are. And upon waking, maintain the connection. Avoid grabbing your phone immediately. Instead, breathe deeply and recall the feeling you had as you fell asleep. This reinforces the programming and keeps the vibration elevated throughout the day. Repeat this ritual for 7 nights and watch. Something changes. First internally, then externally. The world begins to respond, because this is not magic. It is the science of consciousness. And now, you are not just living another day. You are creating a new reality. The ladder experiment was not just proof that imagination creates reality. It was a key that unlocks any door, a model that can be applied to any area of life. Once you understand that the subconscious responds to what you feel as true, there are no real limits to what you can manifest. Health, relationships, finances, self-esteem, life direction, everything begins in the same place, within. The great trap is to think this only works for small things or tests. But Neville Goddard made it clear, if it works for a ladder, it works for a new job, a healing, a new love, or a complete life change. The process is exactly the same. The only difference is your willingness to surrender fully to the inner experience, without doubting, without rationalizing, without sabotaging yourself with old mental patterns. Let's apply this technique, for example, to finances. Instead of repeating empty affirmations like "I am rich," practice what Neville called the assumption of the wish fulfilled. Imagine yourself lying down to sleep, entering the SATS state. Instead of thinking about debts or difficulties, you visualize your banking app showing an amount that brings you relief. You hear the sounds, you feel the emotion of tranquility, of gratitude. You don't wish for it to happen, you feel it is already happening. This vibration is picked up by the subconscious, and like a magnet, begins attracting circumstances that reflect this new inner state. If it's love, you don't beg for someone. You feel loved. You visualize scenes of connection, laughter, companionship. You feel the touch, the presence, the joy of being with someone who values you, and you fall asleep in that vibration. Because the subconscious doesn't distinguish between the real and the imagined, it only reproduces what has been consistently felt as true. And if it's health, picture yourself full of energy, running, smiling, breathing with ease. See yourself in the mirror with vitality. Feel your body functioning perfectly. If the emotion is intense, the body begins to respond. This isn't magic. It's neuroscience allied with spirituality. Jacobo Grinberg said that the neuronal field responds to individual perception. If you change your inner perception, the field responds like a mirror, adjusting the image. And that adjustment begins when you decide to stop living in the old mental script and begin to feel the new as if it were already real. The ladder technique wasn't about steps, it was about access. From the moment you feel you can access a different reality, the subconscious takes that as an order, and the structure of your life begins to shift. You now have a tool in your hands, and more than that, you have understanding. The question is not whether it works. The question is, will you apply it because the world you desire is already waiting for the right feeling? Now that you know this practice, the power is literally in your hands. Tonight, as you lie down, do not allow the day to end on autopilot. Shut out the world, breathe deeply, enter the sat state, and live within yourself the reality you want to experience. Feel as if it's already real, and sleep in that vibration. Do this for 7 nights in a row, not out of obligation, but as a sacred commitment to your new life. You don't need to forcefully change the external world, just shift your inner vibration, and the world outside reorganizes. Remember, it's not about repeating empty phrases, but about truly feeling what you have chosen to live. And when this practice becomes habit, you will never be the same person again. If this content touched you, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share it with someone who also needs to awaken this power. And leave in the comments the phrase that begins your transformation. I feel as if it's already real. Because from now on, it's no longer a matter of luck. It's a matter of choice. You chose to create, you chose to awaken, you chose to live your new reality.